Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Things We Know. Today, we're going to dive into a topic we've referred to, and it's a topic we love so much. We use it extensively in our coaching practices, but I think we probably also, as parents, do too, and as friends. It's reframing, and I think we do this well for each other.
I was going to say, I think we
Yeah,
self-reframe as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
It's all about changing your perspective to grow through challenges.
Yeah. I think of reframing as probably the most powerful tool in anyone's toolbox. Like anybody can reframe. And I also think many people probably reframe for themselves and they don't even realize that that's what they're doing. But it
Mhm.
is definitely a game changer for personal growth. No question.
Totally. Um, you want to talk about what it
I'm sure.
is?
I'd be happy to. So yeah, at its core, it's as simple without being easy. It's as simple as changing the way we look at something in order to change how we're experiencing it. Yeah.
Right.
So can you give an example?
Yeah, like instead of seeing a mistake as a failure, you can reframe it as a learning opportunity. That's like a
Mhm.
really oversimplification, but so true.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about self-awareness, you and I, off camera and on camera or on tape, but really truly you're not going to see some challenge or something that looks like a failure and reframe it and feel it's a learning opportunity if you're not really self-aware, right? If you're not like
Mm,
seeing this like as everything happening for you. But it's a subtle shift and it can make a world of difference to like if you believe things are unfolding the way they should, this sucked, what can I learn from it?
right. Right. So that whole idea there's no such thing as failure, only feedback, right? Such a cliche, but it's not that I love the idea of it. It's like putting on glasses, right? It doesn't mean the things have changed, but you're just seeing it in a different way. And it also isn't spiritually bypassing again either. It's about
Right.
seeing what you can take away from it positively versus the constant beating yourself up
Yes.
over something.
I used to have work with someone a long time ago who talked a lot about this. She was kind of like an old soul, and she said, she'd give an example of like somebody on a in a canyon, like on a trail, right? And there's maybe somebody's in peril somewhere down way below at the river, and maybe there's a helicopter above that's coming in to help. I can't remember the exact way she set this up, but everyone is seeing this differently, right? The people on the
Mm,
trail in the middle probably see both happening,
yeah,
and the helicopter might be seeing the people on the trail going, they look fine, and and the people down below don't know that anyone sees them. So
that's
there's like
interesting.
when you change where you're looking at it from, you
Hmm.
can get a lot more information, or you can get different information. So like when you can see something differently, you can change how you respond to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you change how you respond to that particular incident or how you could respond differently in the future or maybe
Well,
both?
I think both. I think
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you can widen your lens or look at something differently, it'll instantly help you feel differently if you can
Yeah.
see it differently, right? So I think you can it's like sometimes those I spy things, you see very little bit of the picture, and then when you
Yes.
see the whole thing, you feel very differently about it. I think that can be instant. But no, you're
Mm.
absolutely right. It can teach you in the future not to like make assumptions or see things a certain way without trusting there might be another way to see it. Absolutely.
Right, right. It's not it's going from the idea of black and white to gray.
Right. And to be clear, I think this is clear, but just to make sure, this is not Pollyanna, like, like you said, it's not bypassing. It's not like putting a smiley face on things. It's
Right.
not instantly saying, well, it's better than this.
Right.
It is literally just another way of looking at it, like I got up there and made a fool of myself. Like, also, could you have like shown everyone how brave you were? Like, could both things be true, right? Like, is there another way to look at this, right? But I don't know why that example just came to
Well,
mind, but I do think it isn't about pretending that part isn't true. It's about
mhm.
offering other possibilities.
Yeah. I think that's a key is offering other possibilities. And also, and maybe this was specific, maybe this doesn't make sense, but maybe it's specific to your, that specific example. But I often think when you think you failed or you made a fool of yourself or whatever, and we've said this sentence or question a million times, is that true? Right? Like to your example of the canyon, right? You are up on stage and you think, oh, I didn't do this right. I forgot this part of the speech. I should have done this, blah, blah, blah. But the people in the audience are experiencing it their way and don't know any of what you made the mistakes. So sometimes even the reframing can
Sure.
start with says who.
Yes,
You
according to
know?
who? Oh, so perfect. Yes, thank you
Yeah.
for saying that. According to whom?
Yeah.
Because then instantly you're realizing, from my point of view, and
Right.
there's and this gets tricky with some people, so many people who are black and white. There's one truth. There's so many different versions of the truth depending on where you're standing.
Right.
And I'm not talking about spinning it or,
Right.
manipulating it. I'm talking about, like, you're right, from where someone sat, they didn't know what your original speech was. That landed for them.
Right.
So you're
Totally.
right.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, we do that a little bit on when we get off the pod, right?
Yeah.
Like we think about, there are times where we actually make a physical mistake that we're like, okay, we're going to edit that out because it's incorrect information.
Right.
But then, sometimes I do. I assume you do too. I get off and we did this earlier in the summer where I was like, I don't think that pod went very well.
Yeah, you thought both of them, and I listened to them, and I was like,
And
they're
you're like, they
great.
were fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and in that instance, um, the day that I texted you that, I was in a down vibe.
Mm.
And I knew that, but I didn't want to couch it that way with you. I just said, this is how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
I know you listened to him because you listened to him before we sent him off to the editor. I trust your opinion. And that was in my mind, my way of saying, like, I don't even think I'm right necessarily right now. I'm not
Yeah.
feeling great mentally or emotionally. I think it was an emotional situation. And so I was talking to myself very poorly about a lot of things. And the pod was at the top because we just done it. And
Right.
so I think that's something to think about when in reframing it.
Yes.
You might not be able to reframe in the moment
Right.
because you are in the depths of whatever you think it has gone wrong or
Yeah.
didn't work out. Give it a day, come back and
Right.
revisit.
And what's interesting, that's when it's really important, um, to know your audience and, like, read the room. It's not helpful when someone's in a down place to, like, reframe them out of it. That's not what you're trying
Right.
to do. It's not about
Right.
reframing, isn't about cheering people up.
No.
It's about, like, I hear that, I'll listen, and it's also really, like, I think
Yeah.
I waited a day or two and I said, I listened to them, they're good.
Yeah.
But even if I'd said something that day, I think and hope I obviously can get it wrong many times, because, like you, I can second guess things. But I think hopefully I would have been like, it's possible it sucked. It's possible it was good. Right. Like,
Yeah.
we'll see, something like that. Because I think we've done it enough times now to think things are bad and then people like them. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Agreed. Okay.
um,
So talk about the science behind it.
yeah. Okay. So it is, I'm sure like it's got a lot of, reframing is probably claimed in a lot of different types of theories and psychology and stuff. But the way we learned it, it's rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy. We learned it through some NLP, but it's all about challenging and changing unhelpful cognitive distortions. That's like the
Mm.
CBT definition for it. And we learned about that a lot. When people delete and distort and, kind of conflate things in their mind, we're listening for that. And we get to ask, questions around that. Like,
Right.
is that true? Or, is that something that, you've always done? What else in your life feels that way? Like, where you get to start to not challenge them, but really, like, help them on their own, hopefully get to a place where they're realizing, like, maybe this is a feeling and not a fact, or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So that's what it's written in.
Yeah. And I love that because I think you're right. It's about in our world as coaches, we are here to hear that. And of course, when somebody's speaking in those terms, they're in the weeds of their life. And like I've always said, my favorite part of being a coach is I get to fly above all that and see things that they don't see.
Yeah.
And so yes, just like I hear you. You know, sometimes it's
Mhm.
the mirroring back. I heard you say you don't think this week's pod was very good. Tell me more. You know, and maybe I would. We were texting, and I didn't need you to ask me any more questions, but
Yeah.
you could have said, why did you think that? And I probably would have said, well, and then maybe we did a little bit. I said, I felt like that one was rushed. And maybe I would have gotten to the place where I'm like, and I'm just in a crappy mood. You know,
Mhm.
you listen, you know, but what's interesting is I know that it is something that when a client or a friend or a family member comes to their own reframe by through discussion, whether it's questions or just discussion, they feel so much better. And the research does show that reframing reduces stress, it improves mental health, it does enhance problem solving skills because you're going a little bit deeper into a very high level, this sucks or this is bad. And so, you know, we can train our brains to be
Mhm.
adaptable around this. There's nothing better to me than to hear a client or somebody say, thank you for that reframe. You
Yeah.
hear it in the way they even say thank you. It's just like
Yes.
the
The
stress.
voice changes.
Yes, completely.
Yes.
Completely.
It is absolutely my favorite thing. I think at one point when we worked for HCI, we all got, had to do 2-minute videos, like what we love about TCM
Mm,
or something. And I remember saying the reframe, it's the smallest, simplest thing
yeah.
can shift everything for somebody, like I think about like somebody who was quitting their job at a hospital during COVID and felt like a quitter and an abandoner and all
Mm,
this stuff. And I was like, well, what if you're meant to do something else around this? And what if you're freeing up that, right? Or what if
yeah.
you're like choosing the health of your child who is compromised and you're not being given enough PPE is what I'm hearing. So
Mm,
it's interesting that you came into this feeling shameful and like a quitter. And I'm hearing that, you're really following your gut and your intuition. And she was like, oh my God, thank you.
yeah.
Like tears just started,
Oh, I bet.
just that. And you and I, you're right. That is probably one of my, it seems so small and it is energy shifting in such a big way. And so that, especially if they came for coaching, that is a
Right.
way that can shift them almost instantly and
Yeah.
just like lighten their load.
Yeah.
And the other things, just the science behind it, the neuroplasticity, I wanted to make sure I share this neuroplasticity.
I know
Did I
it's a
get that
hard word
right?
to say. Yep.
Plasticity. It's a
Plasticity.
term that often comes up that, it's kind of in the zeitgeist right now. Everyone's talking
Yeah.
about, mindset and like growing new neurons. It refers to the brain's ability to recognize itself by forming new neural connections. And we talk about neural pathways. Some of our habits are just neural pathways. We're used to seeing things a certain way. We're used to responding things. We're used to doing things a certain way. We can get really stuck in that groove, and that can really block growth, right? I
Mhm.
always try to get people like, I know it's annoying as fuck. I'm sure it is, but I'll always be like, excuse me. Like, let's say you say to me, it's just the way I am, which I never like that. But,
Mm,
I always do it this way. Like I always, forget. And then I see it this way and then I'm in a bad mood, right? If you were to say something like that and I'd be like, could you try this? Like in the past,
yeah.
I used to see things this way. Going forward, I'm going to try not to. Like actually using those words with the brain can open up a new neural pathway. So reframing taps into that ability.
And it's practice, right? Like it
Mhm.
doesn't mean just because they learn it from you or I in a session, doesn't mean they're magically never going to do that again. I mean, the brain is very adaptable, and also it's a rewiring, it does take
Mhm.
some time. Um, I know you have some other, because what I've always loved and what I always say to people who want to coach with you, like you are the queen of this type of coaching. I'm a little bit, I consider myself a little more outer game. I think of you as inner game. I love that right now we actually have a client that we're sharing. I want to do that more
Mhm.
often for sure.
That's fun.
It's been super fun. So I know you have some more examples, but the first example that in my mind is more about me. And I
Oh
haven't
yeah.
even said this to you, but so when we did a webinar, right,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the retreat. We were pretty excited about it. I felt like
Yeah.
we had a pretty good content. I could tell in the webinar it was not landing. And you felt differently, but I right out of the gate was like, I don't think this worked. And seriously, technically right now it didn't. However, what I loved about it and where I got to very quickly, because I have been doing this a lot. So when you talk about being able to adapt,
Mhm.
was, yeah, I was disappointed in the moment, but then I was like, you know what? That was our first webinar. We did it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if
Yeah.
it worked or not. Like we did it. We no longer, and that's one of those moments, and this to me is another great reframing thing where I go, okay, what went well and what would I like to see more of the next time? Now, I haven't really gone too deep into that because we had other things we wanted to do around promoting the retreat, but like before we would do another webinar, I think there's some
Yeah.
things I'd probably change. I can't think of them off top right now, but instead of wallowing in like, well, that didn't go the way I wanted to, I was like, well, that didn't work this time, but we'd never done a webinar before and we
It's
did it.
interesting because I remember you saying that, and I know you think that, and it's not that I feel totally differently, but I do think it landed. We had the wrong people there. Like
Oh,
I
interesting.
think where we could learn a lot is like who to get there and how. We
Mm,
had people there that or like already know they can't go to the retreat, but they're just really intrigued and they're hoping we do
uh,
them later. We had like
true.
several, and their feedback kind of supported that. And you and I have
Yeah.
heard from different people that like also like that, oh, that was neat, and in the follow-up, like, thanks, I still wish I could go. I really hope you guys do another one. So it's like I actually think it landed,
Interesting.
and it just wasn't the right people.
Yeah. But
I mean,
that's it, right?
great people,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
like
No,
not
no,
the,
no.
yeah,
No, I hear what you're saying. But no, so there you go, right?
yeah,
But without reframing,
yeah.
we would just been like, well, I'm never doing a webinar again because clearly we don't know how to do those and they didn't work.
I
But
wasn't
instead it
feeling that,
was,
but yeah.
no, no, I'm not, I wasn't feeling that
Oh,
either. But I'm
oh,
saying
yeah. Oh, I
that's what you
see.
could have done, right? We could have just been
Right.
like, throw up our hands and be like,
That's
well,
what a closed mindset would say.
right, that didn't
Yes.
work, so I'm never doing another webinar. Instead, I was like, okay, that didn't work the way I wanted it to, is probably a better way of putting
Yeah.
it. And what would we do differently next time? And now we know.
So
One of them.
it's so fun too, because then we could go down the rabbit hole of like actually what we said was true. We were like, it's not going to be a hard sell. It wasn't. It was this
No.
like beautiful little gathering where people
Yeah.
got to do a little future pacing and think about themselves. But if we really wanted it to be something else, we probably could have called it something else. It's funny. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Do you have any other good examples?
I
I'll try to
mean,
think of one
I
while
feel like
you're
I have a bajillion, but like the most recent one is kind of similar to the one I just said, so I'll make it quick. But somebody who got laid off, like, and
mm,
not anyone we know, because we know lots of people, but that we both know, but somebody that I work with that you don't know got laid off and was devastated, and all the
mm,
fear, all the lack started coming up, and just all that second guessing and the crisis of confidence was flooding.
yeah.
And so that's not like going to be an instant, but what like the work we started to do, and the reframe started in that, like when she first brought it to me, and it kind of helped as a guidepost to say like, there's this one passion that you have. One of the reasons you even came to me is because you've been neglecting this one thing that you've really,
Mm,
really wanted to pursue. And it's in the arts, and there's potential there, and so it's like, what if like this
yeah.
is a gift of time to you, and what if doing that because you love it really builds up that self-esteem again. Like doing something you love, I always think, is a shortcut to building self-esteem, because you like really enjoy yourself when you're doing something you love, and you can kind of go 30 feet above yourself and be like, she's cool. So what if like that's how you're going to heal yourself through this, is like really lean into that. You have more time for it. And she has an art show coming up, so
Oh,
yeah,
yay.
it's
That's
pretty cool.
exciting. That is cool.
So, not saying like she's not worried about those things. We're still working on that. But the
Yeah.
instant reframe was like, if this was actually a gift, how could it be?
I love that. Yeah, I think that's the key right there. It's an instant energetic shift. It doesn't mean everything's unicorns and rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So my reframe, and I've shared this in past pods, I know the one that comes to me, and this is me reframing myself, was when my mom passed. It was out of the blue. Everybody knows this story if you've listened to the pod before. And of course I was sad. Of course I didn't reframe myself out of grief. but the way I needed something to hold on to in that grief. And it was that it was at the beginning of COVID. And had she survived, she would have been somebody we couldn't have seen and visited while she was sick to begin with. And that would have been devastating for her and us as well. So it didn't shift my grief, but it did give me something to hold on to. And I think a lot of times that's what reframing does. It's that instantaneous hold on to, grab onto something, and then from there work out of it, right? So like you just said, your client's not worried about having lost her job, but she's also finding a way to grab onto the next best feeling thought.
And you hear me say this a lot, so you'll probably crack up, but I love when they say our words back to us. And she said, "I've never felt more me." And I was like, "Oh, that's so great." Like, I'm so, because, that could have, she could have been like, "What am I doing?"
Yeah.
and that wouldn't be my fault either, or hers. Like, the reframe is an opportunity to check it out. It's not like, this is going to work.
Right.
This is the magic answer. That's not it.
Okay. Say that again. The reframe is an opportunity.
It's an opportunity to like see what else is possible. It's not like the magic answer.
Yes. Doesn't make everything change. It gives you possibility.
Gives you new avenues to go down.
It gives you choice.
Yes.
And ultimately that's what humans want. Right. They want choice. And often when things don't go the way we want, we do become very tunnel vision. And well, it didn't work out, so I suck. Or this happened, so that's my fault. Right. And when you ask that question, when you reframe, it gives you opportunities and choice.
Right. I always loved our mentor, Stacey, would say, it just, like, first of all, that we all suffer from the meaning we make out of things, not what actually happened. Right.
Yes.
So this work, like when you have that sort of opportunity to get curious and look for a reframe, it's expanding the menu of choices of what's possible or what could be true. And I always loved that. I like the menu of choices.
I was just going to say menu of choices. I can hear her saying that, and I get the same visual every time, like going into a deli and seeing the big menu and trying to, I want this and this and this. So, okay, you can hire a coach and they can help you learn how to reframe. But if that is not, how does somebody learn how to reframe right now?
I mean, one method, like some of the techniques for self-coaching, which I think everyone's capable of, really, truly, that's the road to self-awareness, is just to ask yourself, what is another way to look at this? But before you even do that, and because that is simple and effective, get really clear on what you are thinking and feeling. Because sometimes we kind of go and react to, or we respond to, or we get like kind of dejected, but like, what is the actual like beef you have with yourself or the world or, a situation, right? What is it? Like, make the statement or ask the question. What is it? Like, this sucked for us, right? It's like, okay, what is another way of looking at it?
Yeah.
Right. So, people seem to enjoy it. Maybe we ask more people next time, something like that. Right. Like, so there's just that self-coaching.
Yeah.
That's one technique. What is another way of looking?
What is another way of looking at this? Yeah, I love that. Another one is affirmations. And I mean, one could say positive affirmations. I just think it's affirmations. It's taking the negative thought and almost flipping it to a positive thought. Lack is a big one, right? So often we are falling down those rabbit holes of negativity from a feeling of lack. And so it's like flipping it into abundance. There's plenty for everyone. You are abundant.
One thing I hear people doing a lot, and I'm always proud and impressed, not proud, but like impressed when they can do that. Although sometimes it feels begrudging, and you got to kind of check your energy on it. And it's like, I get to go on a walk.
Yes.
I get to spend time with my neighbor or whatever it is. Like, it's just this.
The energy around that is
different. But sometimes it's like, no, I get to use my legs this morning. I get to actually get out of bed. That's lovely, right?
Yeah.
When you say affirmations, I think of Stuart Smalley, which I love.
People like me.
Gosh darn it, I'm good enough. I know it can get parodied, and I understand why it can be goofy and silly, but it is incredible when you can, grab one. Could be your theme, I am statement for the year, or just something that's just a really great course corrector for you, or that brings you back to, center. And I think of this one that I borrowed, or I like, with her permission, but somebody who used to coach me, like hers that one year was like, I walk great, no, powerfully through life with ease and grace. And I just thought, like, that's kind of a long one, but like it's this great, like you could see it when she told me that. You could see it in the way she walked and the way she
Yeah.
went into a room and got up in front of people. And I love that. I think sometimes can be as simple as, I'm strong. Like, how do I want to be strong in this situation? Right. Or everything is figure outable, right? That's Ray Forleo used to always say that. Probably still does. So like you can have something that really helps you course correct. That it has to mean something though, right? You can't be like, I get to do it, but yeah.
Right. I mean, there have definitely been times where somebody's like, well, I have to go do this to build my business. I'm like, you have to is not a great energy in my personal opinion. So do you get to go do these things? And that does tend to change the energy a little bit. I think for me, you're right. I think an affirmation is something that when I am starting to go down a path of feeling lack, being able to say something to myself right away does shift the energy. I'm somebody, and we talked about this in our books pod with the wealthy spirit. I start my mornings out with the affirmations that I really love. And I was doing it this morning. I had missed a day, I don't know, for whatever reason. And even just doing it, I could feel the energy shift. My physical body felt different when I was done. If it's happening in the middle of a day, or if I'm doing it at night because I'm having a tough time falling asleep, like the idea of like, thank you for my perfect health, thank you for my,
I love that.
Absolute success, total happiness, infinite prosperity. Like it like takes away the stress of it. It's an anchor to
I
bring you
think
back to what is true.
You've always been a beacon with that stuff. Like, shall I pull a card for us? Like if like you're really good at like opening the window for some new perspective to come in. You're really good at that. I've always appreciated that about you. And that goes more than an affirmation. I think it's possibility.
Yeah.
It's just really about like, if we can at least agree that there's possible other ways that we could look at this.
Yeah.
That's even uplifting.
Yeah, totally.
Journaling is another very helpful one. Write down your thoughts and then challenge them. One fun, creative way I've seen people do this is, just get a plain notebook, and on the left side, let that little inner critic, that little fear, if you saw Inside Out too, like let the like anxiety and the fear, like let it talk. It has something for you. That's another like positive affirmation that allows you and I to reframe, which is every part of you has a positive intention for you, even if it feels mean or scared or worried. If you get underneath it, you're going to find out like it wants you to be safe and loved. And so then you get to have a conversation with it, right? Like you can have left side be like the fears and the right side be like the wise truths, right? Like that feels real, here's what's true. Right. And so like actually having a conversation between your parts, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love parts work. Okay. So, okay. So this all sounds well and good. I already said it. This is simple without being easy. But I'm sure there's going to be somebody that listens and they're just mired down, probably for good reason. Experience informs beliefs. Maybe they've had a really couple rough years, months, weeks, whatever, and they're really stuck in that negative, low vibe energy. First, goddess bless, right? Like that's a tough place to be. I've certainly been there.
Me too.
I know you have
more
as
than
well.
once.
Yep. will be again. I'm certain of it. So how do you reframe, especially if you don't have a coach in your life, or someone
Yeah.
who is good at seeing flying at 30,000 feet for you? It doesn't have to be a coach. It could be a friend. It could be a family. It can be a partner. How do you do that for yourself when you're really mired down?
Well, I don't think you can skip straight to reframe, actually, now that I think
Mm,
about it. But I think also, I mean, it's a tough one. That's a tough
yeah.
one. You got to start small, and there's no like right answer for every single situation like that. What I know can work, with my children, with my husband, with me, and with clients is, first of all, remembering that you're not broken just because you're down. Like,
Mm,
really, like, people can't be broken. Like, you are not broken. We have this thing we bought into that if you're not happy or positive or flourishing, then you're doing life wrong.
mm,
And that's not true. You're
mm-mm.
actually doing life right. You're having an emotion. That's human.
Yeah.
You're having a long lasting emotion. Like, you're having a
Yeah.
tough stage, you're in a season. So I
Yeah.
feel like the very, very first answer to that is the reminder that everything's temporary, even
Mm,
this deep, dark shit. This is temporary.
yeah.
So that's like a reminder. It's not as much of a reframe, but it
Right.
can be. Like, to like zoom out and see this hellish feeling as temporary is a reframe, because
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like you're so deep in it, it's all there was.
Yeah.
And then I think there's, um like, the smallest thing, like if you can get yourself moving, if you can get yourself into some sunlight,
Mm,
even if it's for 5 minutes, that's one thing you can
yeah.
do to reframe. You can, like, actually, really start to see something differently, and then just challenge yourself to find one little tiny dot of, like like a little tiny miracle, or a little tiny dot of sunshine, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, this color, or that sound, or this puppy that I passed, or something like that. That could be enough. Like, that really
Hmm.
can be the beginning of reframing, because then it starts to, like, wake parts of us up. It makes us, like, start thinking about, oh, maybe I want to put on music, or maybe I want to reach out to somebody. Maybe that I need more help with this. This is pretty big,
Yeah.
like, if you can, like, just breathe some, like, outdoor air into it, that can be the beginning toward a reframe.
Yeah.
I mean, because there is also the, like, connecting with other people and finding out that they're struggling too also helps. But yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Not from a misery loves company, but from
Right.
a not feeling so isolated
Right.
piece of it.
Not
It may
alone.
the one little shift makes me think. I heard this early on this year. I know I'm way late on the Gabby Bernstein train, and she's not for everybody, but I've been listening to her this year, and she talked about reaching for the next best thought. Like the next, and just one thought at a time, right? So same thing,
Oh, I
like, oh,
love
that's a
that.
cute, like that's a cute little puppy. Oh, it's sunny today. It's just then, and if you
Yes.
can build, like, I just picture literally like little bricks of the
Yeah.
next best thoughts until you are able to climb out of that. And it might take days, it might take weeks, it might take months. I love the idea of the zooming out piece, because even if you've been mired down for a long time, there was a time that you weren't,
Right.
right? And so
Right.
you can't, we can all get back there.
Right.
And there's no timetable. There's no timetable.
Yeah. There's so much I want to say about that, because there really is, there's things we can ask as coaches when someone comes to us like this, that, and we're not afraid of that. Like, this is like what we do. Right. And there's like, we don't have any answers for you. We have questions, because you have all
Right.
your own answers, but it's like, could be as simple as, like, what would you like to be experiencing instead? Because
Yeah.
our energy will go to whatever we're paying attention to. So, like,
Yep.
if you are paying attention to the shitty things, and we are not saying those things aren't shitty, you're
Right.
going to feel shitty, and that's really all you're going to see. And you're going to see a lot of proof that that's true.
Yeah.
If you are, like, if you can get yourself to zoom out enough to, like, go have a conversation like this, you can also, you know start to work with your belief that, like, there is something better than this. And
Mm,
what would that look like? Like, what would that feel like? What would that sound like? Who, like, what version of me,
yeah.
do I see there? So, like, there's ways of starting to play with, like, what you're believing and what you're paying attention to, that can, shift your energy. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I guess, it's not always an absolute flip flop reframe, right? I was thinking about another.
It's like, would they say turning a cruise ship or something?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, trying to turn a ship. It's I was thinking of another personal one, and I was thinking about after the debate between Biden and Trump, I was just like, OMG, what the fuck? And in the 3-ish weeks
That was a train
between,
wreck. Yeah.
oh my God, the 3-ish weeks between the Biden having that horrible debate and him dropping out, I had the thing I kept holding on to, which is not a reframe, but maybe it's an affirmation. I just had to keep holding on because I knew no matter what, I was voting blue, and I was going to work to elect whoever was running at the top of the ticket. It was my despair was that I don't this is going to be hard for me to be like, get out and vote for Biden. And so all I kept saying to myself was, this has to be the breakdown before the breakthrough. This has to be the
Mm.
breakdown before the breakthrough. I also really stopped watching all the news. Like, I could not go anywhere near any of that stuff to protect my energy. But that was the thing I was holding on to. And so that when he did so gallantly, in my opinion, put country before self and leave the race and then
Mhm.
elevate Kamala Harris. I was like, that's it. There's the breakthrough. That's what I kept saying was going to happen, And so
Yeah.
that was, it wasn't so much of a
Things fall
reframe.
apart when something else is ready to emerge too. Like think about like
Exactly.
nature, right? Like
Yes.
how like those beautiful blossoms fall away because fruit's coming in.
Right. Right. So it's that sort of and you're right. Sometimes it's about reaching out to people who can help, friends that can support you and not give advice, but just be there to witness. Maybe it is therapy, maybe it is coaching. Um, if you're in the depths, it's not great to be there alone.
No. And it really helps to have someone point out to you, like we've talked about this here before, that what if you're just that gelatinous mess inside a cocoon, but you're like
Yeah.
in the middle of like that transformation? What if you're so close that it just
Yeah.
feels that way, but
Yeah.
actually you're about to emerge,
Yeah.
and that can sound a little Pollyannish unless you like really know their situation. But sometimes when just somebody, there's the gift of somebody else's perspective and how they see you
Yeah.
can really pull you through that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I was thinking, I mean, I just had this conversation with someone actually because we're getting ready for another episode about learning something new. And I said, whew, I mean, Lisa's learning Russian, and that just really got me going. Like, I haven't been learning anything new. And the friend I was walking with was Beth. She was like, "Are you kidding? You've learned how to like start a podcast. You've learned like how to, navigate a bunch of stuff for Griffin." Like she was constantly seeing me as someone who's taking on new things, and I was like, I shouldn't say she's constantly. She sees me as someone constantly taking on new things.
Yes.
And I was like, I feel like I've just been frozen and responding to life or reacting to life. And it's funny how sometimes it takes someone seeing you. And then she, was like, well, what about me? I'm like, hello, you wrote 2 books, so it's
Yeah.
just a funny, it's so great to like connect with somebody and be vulnerable and then offer each other your points of view. And then like none of this works, the reframing or anything, unless you're willing and ready to receive it. Like
Well, I was just
really
going to
take
say,
it in.
like, being able to say that takes a sense of safety. Like, you're right. I think I already said it, right? We are always in the weeds of our own life, and we're going along doing things, and maybe it is reactionary, but regardless of why it's happening, we are always changing and doing things differently, right? But because we're in the weeds of our own life, we don't see it.
Mhm.
You have to have a place. It helps to have a place or a person that you can be open and vulnerable with so that they can then show you what they see. And you're right, then you have to be able to receive it. Because if Beth says to you, well, you're always learning things about Griffin, you go, yeah, but I have to do that. You're not
Uh-huh.
receiving,
Mhm.
or well, Lisa worked with me on the pod, then you're not receiving.
Mhm.
You know what I
It's
mean?
true.
Like even you saying the Russian thing, I'm like, oh, that's just fun. Like that's just a game.
Yeah, right.
I can say spasibo, which is thank you. That's about all I know in
But
Russian.
still, like it is an interesting thing that we do. We minimize so much, and that blocks the
Yes.
reframe, and it
Yes.
blocks the growth. But it did also make me go, I got to pick the ukulele back up. So thanks for the topic. That's another topic.
That's
Tune in next time.
hilarious. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh my gosh, that's
Um,
so funny. Well, anything else you want to say before we talk about our song, not song?
I I think we covered this, so forgive me if we have, but I think it's just so important because of a conversation I just had with my son, which is if you are relating to this and you're that kind of good friend or that mom or that sibling, it is really, really important to join them first and really understand
Mm,
what they're feeling before you reframe, because it can sound to them like you're at leasting them. And by that, I mean, like, well, at least you're not starving, right? Or at least you have a roof
right.
over your head, or at least, you have a boyfriend, right? Just like, don't complain about how he is. At least you have one, right? Like, that's just
Right.
this, I don't know where that comes from, probably some silly movie, um, but they're reframing, like wanting to offer a reframe could sound like you're not listening or
Yes.
not connecting or empathizing and acknowledging. So I think that there is a point of joining in and being like, that sucks. I think that has been something I actually take for granted. It's a really beautiful thing in our relationship. If I were to scroll through any early morning thing we've been through as moms or as friends or wives, that we both can go, that sucks first,
Yeah.
and that we don't try to like reframe anything too soon.
Well, I think without joining in, without witnessing and acknowledging, reframing just becomes advice.
Exactly.
Right. And reframing doesn't work if it's advice. Reframing is helping someone find their own best answer. It
Mhm.
doesn't work until they say, oh my God, thank you. I
Mhm.
hadn't thought of it that way, you know,
Exactly.
or I was thinking this and now I'm thinking that, right?
Yes, so a safe question is like, can I offer another perspective?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. So you need, yes, come in, listen, witness, and then perhaps offer a reframe if it feels appropriate. And it might not always, right? Like if they're in the depths, if somebody had said to me, well, at least your mom's not living through COVID, I'd have been like, fuck you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I had to come up with that reframe. No one could tell me that
Yes.
reframe, right?
No, that's so
You
true.
know?
That's a
So
shitty reframe. I kind of ruins with
nobody even
that.
tried to do that.
Okay.
That's just literally coming up off the top of my head. But like that's a perfect example of like, but at least you have.
No,
In
yeah.
the moment when somebody is feeling that, at least you have is I
The
get why they're
worst.
doing it. It's coming from their own like, oh, I gotta help, but it's
It's
not helpful.
minimizing. It is
Yes.
minimizing and it's
Yeah.
not listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've been guilty of it, and I'm also really
Oh,
working on it.
100% me too. No question in my mind. Nothing we share here are we ever perfect at. I think we're pretty
No.
clear about that, but
Yeah.
let's just say it again. Like this
We're
is something
obsessed with this because
because we do it all because yeah,
it's our
and
goal.
we learn this and it is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
What it's not powerful for is finding a song.
Exactly.
I mean, we both like we both were like, did you find a song about reframing? And you're right. I
Yeah.
went into I did the same thing you did. It was like change of perspective. Blah, blah. The closest I
Look at
got
it
was
differently. Look at
right,
that. That's kind
totally.
of, we should
And
write a
what
song.
we totally should. The one that I jokingly said we should use is ironic by Alanis Morissette, although it's the opposite. She's reframing
Okay.
good things into bad things. So we
Yeah.
decided not to bring that energy. And instead, for only the second time ever,
Doing a
we're going
quote.
to do a quote. And it's a beautiful one. I'm going to let you say it.
It's Wayne Dyer, the late great Wayne Dyer. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Mm, so good. And so
So good.
true. Yeah. Wayne Dyer.
Well, I love this discussion. I kind of like pulling back the curtain around, why it's so helpful. Like, and,
Yeah.
and basically, I love people, so I love coaching. Like, I love finding out, you know, what's going on with people and what's kind of weighing them down. And it's a really cool tool for that. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Yep.
we hope today's episode has given you all some insights. And by the way, if you do know a song, please, please, please send it to us because we're curious and we'll add it
And
to
we'll add
the,
it to the playlist.
yeah. But yeah, hopefully you've learned something new, or you're just being affirmed in the way you already do things, and how it can help you grow through challenges. That's what I love it for.
Yeah, and maybe you thought, I've never reframed in my life, and now listening to us, you've realized you're pretty good at reframing for yourself. And if that's the case, then huzzah, celebrate that, and use that for your good and the good of others.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Until next time, looking for new perspectives and stay curious.
Yay! Thanks everyone.
Bye. That was